we're squarely in the solutions environment is our approach. So our whole approach going forward is develop solutions that help the space operators today and in the future, and also to work space-related missions, and then to apply automation and AI and machine learning where possible to lighten the load for those various missions and other associated missions. We have folks in missile defense, and then also exploring future missions like tracking of hypersonic glide vehicles and those types of missions.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Damian DiPippa, Chief Executive Officer at Auria Space. Damian, thanks for connecting with me today.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
No, this will be fantastic. We've had a lot of great space companies on the podcast, so look forward to learning more about yours and your mission. But before we start, can you give us a little bit of background? Like, how did you get yourself into this space and find yourself as the CEO of Auria Space?
Yeah, this has been a great opportunity for me here. My career began in the space industry per se. I mean, I'm a legacy from the Reagan years, Strategic Defense Initiative back in the days when they called it Star Wars. So I was one of the young aerospace engineers sitting around a table saying, hey, how do we really make two things hit each other at 3 kilometers per second in subspace? And now to see where that's all progressed over the years, it's really fulfilling. But started there as an aerospace engineer, was a technical lead and technology insertion lead at organizations like the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, a chief architect for space at the National Reconnaissance Office. And then, that led me into more space architecture and C5ISR work, and then into the intelligence community. And also took me to large systems integrators like Northrop Grumman, where I then eventually became a program manager and a vice president. That took me over to lead, almost $1 billion a year organizations at Mantech International, as well as Perspecta. And then I was one of the executive management team members that sold Perspecta to Peraton. And then from there, working for Peraton, I spun off a new space company called Arcfield, which is, a few years old. And then after that, decided I wanted to kind of get away from the large systems integrators. I spent a couple of years consulting and working with a lot of private equity firms. And that led me to Enlightenment Capital, which is the backer for Auria Space. We put together about 4 legacy space-related companies and are trying to rebuild that mid-tier legacy of competitors that we bought up over the years as the large-scale systems integrators. And I think this provides an opportunity to fill that gap of the, highly technical, solution-oriented, agile, mid-tier companies.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. Well, just big picture, since you've seen it all from the big primes down to smaller companies, why has space changed so much? Like, what's been the key things that have driven this?
Well, I think there's some pressing challenges in space that revolve maybe around 3 key areas: kind of awareness, protection, and automation for space. I mean, space domain awareness is a key challenge for everybody working in the space domain today. And, but believe it or not, space is a very big place. Although you may hear about, over 20,000 objects in orbit around the Earth, between actual satellites and debris, that really covers a very large area. So trying to track all of those objects and understand what is happening in that environment is really a huge task. And when something moves up there, is it in an unexpected manner? Is it a simple orbital drift, a chain reaction from something else, or does it look like it was a planned action by somebody? And if so, then what was the intent of that action? Could it be a threat? And then the distance from there to Earth just makes added complexity, particularly in trying to determine what happens when an asset does fail. Was it something mechanical? Was it something environmental? Or did somebody actually take an action against one of our assets, whether it be physical or non-physical? And some of those physical or non-physical attacks could occur from Earth and some from space. They could be kinetic, they could be cyber, they could be obstructive, somebody moving something in front of an asset, or dazzling from Earth. And so from that aspect, I think one of the challenges we need more automation and more autonomy. There's too much to observe. There's too many reactions that would need to happen across multiple space missions for humans in the loop to be able to handle effectively. And so, in order to effectively operate space domain awareness issues, as I previously mentioned, we really do need automation and tools to be able to work with users to be able to solve those problems. So, between commercial and non-commercial imagery and geospatial data, plus a host of other types of space-based electronic collections, there's just way too much information for humans to ingest. And so part of what we're working on are ways to put tools in place to do that automation, to assist the users, to help the space operators.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so with you've worked for the primes and now, leading a mid-sized company or smaller to mid-sized company, what do you personally enjoy most about both different, sectors, if you will? Where do you see the
when you say the sectors, what do you?
Well, the sector size of the company. You got the big primes that generally large, bureaucratic. I picture more like the DoD. My time at Lockheed. Mm-hmm. Very different than a smaller business that can be agile, but there are still some great things with the larger companies. What are the key things you took out of those and that you enjoy most now about your smaller size company?
Right. We're able to move with a lot more speed as a mid-sized company than we did as a larger company. There's a direct line from me as the CEO right to our innovators in many cases. Very, very few tiers of management, and then the customers too. They know they can come directly to me as the CEO. We can get in a closed room, discuss what the challenges are, and then I can turn people loose to work those and issues. And I think that's one of the advantages of a smaller company over a large company. Now, we don't have the massive resources. The nice thing about being with a large systems integrator is we had, way more resources to be able to put at a problem, and we could afford for more things to fall on the cutting room floor, so to speak. That we just don't have that ability. So that requires us to focus a little more. That requires us to prioritize. I like to tell my team often, look, we can do anything we want. That's the value of a small company like us. We really can. We can pick and choose and do anything we want. We just can't do everything. So now we've got to prioritize.
Yeah, that's often in smaller companies, as we're experiencing too. What do you say no to? That's probably one of the most important things. You need to say no to the right things. Mm-hmm. Well, great. Can you also tell us about Auria? What was the vision as it was founded, and what's its current capability set, and what are you guys focused on?
Certainly. Well, we're private equity backed by Enlightenment Capital. We're a provider of solutions for space operations, such as command and control, tasking, satellite communications, and then actual satellite daily operations, space surveillance, tracking, and analysis, as well as test and training for space-related systems and operations. We develop space-related software systems. We architect end-to-end operational solutions, and we provide operational support for space missions across national security space, commercial space operations, and then the scientific community in international space systems. So, for example, commercial satellite providers such as Maxar, they utilize our applications for satellite scheduling and tasking. Our scheduling software is also packaged with the popular analysis software known as Satellite Toolkit as an added tool for analysts to develop satellite tasking operations up front without having to do it manually. And so that's packaged right with their software, and we have an arrangement with them. We even have a commercially available app you can download from Google Play or the App Store called SpyMeSat, where an individual can schedule or order imagery to be provided from various satellite imagery providers using GPS right from their mobile device. And then we're working the future of gamified satellite operation training tools, which are utilized to train the current and next generation of space operators. And those are currently being used at such places as the U.S. Air Force Academy today, as well as the National Space Defense Center. And then we utilize our expertise and our model-based systems engineering to work with various large systems integrators, such as Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Leidos, to help develop future space and end-to-end architectures in support of areas like strategic defense and national security space missions.
So you're uniquely positioned, it sounds like. How's your approach different from other competitors or other players in the space sector?
Yeah, we're squarely in the solutions environment. Is our approach. So our whole approach going forward is develop solutions that help the space operators today and in the future, and also to work space-related missions, and then to apply automation and AI and machine learning where possible to lighten the load for those various missions and other associated missions. We have folks in missile defense, and then also exploring future missions like tracking of hypersonic glide vehicles and those types of missions.
Oh, very good. And so, what do you think are your, what's your standout technology, standout capability that really separates Auria from the rest of the pack?
So we grew up from a development environment and a space operations environment from our legacy companies. So pulling those together, I think, really provides a discriminating capability in the sense that we have the I'll say the hardcore agile developers that are able to work in a room and build the software packages. Yet we also have the space operators as well, and the actual analysts and the training and testing folks in certain areas with missile related systems and space operations systems. And I think the combination of that really allows us to be, innovative, practical, and applicable to the current missions of today for our customers. And since we really understand their missions, we're able to actually tailor our solutions, specifically for those missions and any emerging threats that are coming.
And so, again, different than the primes, but for all of them, space requires substantial R&D, investments. It requires capital. How do you guys approach innovation, especially as the tech landscape, application of AI and new tech comes on board? How do you, what are your insights into that on how you drive your company?
Right. So, different than some of the large systems integrators, we don't bend metal. We don't make satellites. So we're focused primarily in the software domain for building applications that then get applied to space missions or get used by government and commercial providers. So from that standpoint, the R&D costs are a lot less because we're in a software environment. We can do things in an agile environment. We grew up some of our applications from small business innovative research efforts over time that we're able to now build on and continue to work through those. So collaboration with the government, collaboration with some other primes, and then the combination of our own independent research and development. I think that allows us to really be innovative without kind of breaking the bank on the R&D side or having huge R&D investments like some of the major primes do. And then again, we're going to focus and target. So that the resources that we do invest, they're going for specific missions that are going to be applicable to our customers moving forward. A perfect example would be kind of the intersection of cyber and space, driving new strategies for national defense. So, the cyber domain is as much of the future as a warfighting battleground as is, ground, sea, air, and space. And, the more critical intersection with space is due to the fact that destructive and kinetic operations against an adversary's space assets creates debris fields that could cause secondary damage to your own space assets. So cyber operations in space may become a predominant first strike activity to cripple an opponent's ability to communicate, command and control, and gain needed intelligence. And so for us at Auria, we've developed a few tools addressing these specific challenges. Our Cassie application, for example, is a cognitive AI tool with a high velocity ingestion engine that uses unsupervised automation and autonomous machine learning with algorithms for abnormal behavior detection and to identify malicious activity from direct hackers, viruses, bots, and insider threats. So here we targeted a specific cyber mission against space and other cyber assets and put a tool together to be able to accommodate our customers and thwart those types of threats.
How big of a risk do you see personally from being attacked by cyber in space, and what are you doing to prevent that?
Yeah, like I said, I think cyber operations in space may become the predominant first strike activity to cripple an opponent's ability to communicate, to command, to control, or to gain intelligence. Look, I once had a team of offensive cyber professionals at one of the large companies I was with, and they used to tell me, "You can't protect everything all the time. If we really want to get to you, we'll find a way in." This is very, very true for space. Is there are actually many entry points into space architecture. It's not just the satellite, but it includes every ground station, computer, or mobile device that may be able to connect to that infrastructure. So the space domain requires strategies along multiple lines. One, make the assets harder to penetrate than others. So you're not the easy soft target. There are other easier targets. Figure out what are the most important assets and focus more proactively on measures measures to protect them, and then really have plans to recover or backup systems in place when an attack or an intrusion does successfully occur. And we're hearing a lot today about resiliency in our satellite networks and ubiquity, which are two very hot topics in the area today. And so our tools revolve on that. We have another tool called RAMS, which is really an RMF-based type tool to assess, your cyber posture and then be able upfront to determine, okay, what needs to be protected and how do you protect it? And so on the front end, using a tool like RAMS, and then on the back end, using a tool like Cassie that does the automated detection in order to identify those threats when they do occur so that you can stop that occurrence or figure out how to recover quickly.
How would you assess the cyber risk of your supply chain, be it software you're building your capability or your code with, or just inside your coders, more before it gets sent out to space or before the tools? How do you assess that risk?
You mean our own software development
software development and tools you're using that could also be hacked. So supply chain, but more on the software side.
I would say the risk is probably the same for everyone in the development world. You got to take measures. We follow all of the government standards required for developing software in order to harden your code and make sure that the software is protected. We do rigorous testing of our own code as we go forward. And then even, before we deploy, it's going through, a lot of testing in order to ensure that it is as secure as it can be as we go forward.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously super important as well. So what do you think are the most pressing challenges for space companies today, and how are you positioning Auria to tackle these challenges?
I think some of the most pressing challenges for space companies today do fall in the areas of awareness, protection, and automation. Already talked about space domain awareness, the protection side. I think for space companies, we really do have to work on both the physical and non-physical protection of space assets and how we do protect that. And then how do we get through the automation and the autonomy, as I had noted earlier. I think those are really three of the biggest challenges out there. Like I said, space is a big area, and the reaction times and the visibility you have with your space assets are very limited, and so we really do need tools in place to be able to, in an automated fashion, tackle those challenges as we go forward.
And so different than it used to be government really funded space development, exploration capabilities. Now we see, venture, private equity, private capital driving this, I would say this new thrust into space. How do you see that this is, strengthening the defense industrial base to, the security challenges that are happening, or are there challenges with using private capital versus government capital?
Yeah, that's definitely a shift in the aerospace and defense sector that really can redefine the landscape in the coming years. Although there are likely many kind of trends I'll offer too. First is the emergence of commercial providers, companies like Maxar, SpaceX, Starlink, Blue Origin, just to name a few, are evolving this sector by leaps and bounds, and they'll continue to outpace government advancements with the increased commercialization of space. The business model's now there. They're seeing returns. We're noticing it. So the second trend is the adoption of these models and technologies and applications for future national defense sector. They're becoming more cost effective with a faster pace of technology advancement. And this has become very evident as we see more launches of spacecraft on commercial boosters, for example. And then even the United States Space Force has implemented a policy now where they say, exploit what we have, buy what you can, and build what we must. This is really a paradigm shift from the space industry I started in, over 30 years ago, where we really had no option in the defense industrial base, but to start by building from scratch. And so that's a big difference today when you have a key government, military operation saying, hey, look, we're going to buy first before we go in and just start building.
Yeah. It definitely has shifted. From an innovation perspective, I noticed, a lot of the primes and just more of that old school that we're talking about. Government puts out requirement docs, they, develop something, that's starting to change. Are you seeing that change? And how do you keep your company innovating and trying to share with the government or your customers, partners? capability that they may not know they need or can even have access to?
This is a change in I'll say the buying environment within the government, as well as in the build environment for contractors. The evolving rate of change of technologies, the evolving rate of change of our emerging threats does require us to be more agile on the development side. It also requires the government to think of alternative ways of acquiring. The classical RFP acquisition cycles, put the requirements out, 3 months later, industry day, 3 months later, okay, we got a draft RFP, final RFP, 6 months to award, 5 to 7 year contract. Well, the rate of change in technology is much more rapid these days, and the threats are changing that, in many cases, for critical assets, for critical technologies that are evolving forward, especially in the space domain, that acquisition cycle is just too long. And so, there have to be other transactional authorities, utilization of cyber research, other types and mechanisms of being able to acquire key technology, piece different smaller portions together of technology. I think that's going to be required more and more by the government as we go forward. And I think you're seeing some of that already start. Space Development Agency, for example, and how they're moving forward with their new technologies for ground systems to space systems. You have U.S. Space Force standing up a Futures Command that is supposed to be a front door to be able to pull in these types of technologies. And then even in customer sets like the intelligence communities with their R&D shops in putting out smaller contracts or innovative ways to work with commercial providers to be able to pull their research and their products into their systems. We're seeing more and more of that across the government as we go forward. And I think they do have to embrace that because, like I said, the pace of commercial advancement is going to outpace anything the government can do because the business models are there for them to be able to put more money into that research and go forward and develop, new technologies that are viable for a domain that used to be just government, but has now been commercialized as well.
So you have used the cyber program, if you will, and programs like that?
We do. We have almost 20 different cyber programs that began from phase 1 to phase 3, some of which are actually doing autonomous tasking of satellites, actually applications on satellites that are doing autonomous tasking. Others in training, such as our gamified training system as well, and then our CASI system as well for cyber protection.
Are you finding challenges? Often we hear, the chasm of death and the different challenges of getting it into a program. Have you been successful in driving any of these contracts to more of a formal program of record, or have you found that by using those, you've created the technology with the help of the government that's more suited for commercial applications that then have program of records with the government? Where do you see kind of that shift?
Yeah, given the size of our company compared to the large systems integrators out there is, usually when you hear a program of record, you think of maybe large battle stars kind of being put up in space and long, 5, 7, 10-year timelines of these long programs of records. And quite frankly, our addressable market is much smaller than that, overall. So our target is not these large programs of record, but how do we get in early to be kind of that innovative piece, that discriminating technology that might add to a future program of record later on, within these mission spaces for these customers. And so we're finding that our customers are very much attracted to the type of work that we are doing because as they look for how do they solve certain key areas of their mission, we are that provider of those technologies that others can grasp and use. And since, like I said, with space now being more commercialized, what we're doing is not only applicable on the government side, but it's applicable to commercial providers and also to international providers as well.
Yeah.
And so then we're able to kind of leverage those technologies across multiple markets.
So you're seeing success using cyber to develop the technologies, with a use case that's interesting, and then being able to partner with other companies so they can incorporate that technology to then meet the government's needs.
That's part of the design. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Well, collaboration obviously is important in space. Share a couple, unique collaborative or partnership opportunities you've had with be it research institutions or government entities to really drive this innovation? Like what are some key kind of partners that you've really enjoyed working with and delivered capability?
Yeah, so some I can't talk about specifically. We've probably heard in the community a government effort called Kobayashi Maru. We're a key partner on that, working forward with various other companies in the government space, and we add a critical piece to that mission space there. On a more of our solution side with our experts, we are working with key large partners, developing, the next generation of the strategic deterrent system. So we have folks that do like model-based systems engineering to be able to design, what the future system for strategic deterrence should look like to replace the Minuteman III systems. And then we use some of that same expertise for missile defense customers as well. And so those are good partnerships where we're in the mission, but we have I would say a key area of technology expertise that we're able to apply to those missions. And then obviously our work that we're doing in satellite tracking and tasking, space domain awareness, we can't do the whole thing. So we are working, one specific key area that then we partner with other companies, like I said, like Maxar, that are able to use that technology and apply it to their systems to operate their satellite constellations.
Yeah, that's very cool. AI is a buzzword. People use it all the time. How are you tackling trying to, incorporate machine learning and then obviously the next step AI into your capabilities? Are you outsourcing that, insourcing? And what does that look like? Because that's oftentimes a challenge for companies to figure out, well, I need to use AI. How am I doing it?
AI is a big buzzword. You go to any conference or any symposium and every other booth or exhibit you're at, somebody's doing something with AI. So it's a big animal when we look at it. I think almost every company in the technology field, particularly in software, to some extent is going to have to utilize AI capabilities, machine learning capabilities, and we've certainly embraced that. And we're developing those algorithms ourselves with our applications that we're putting out there. So for our automated satellite tasking capabilities, we have a system called APS, and there we are employing AI algorithms so that on the satellite itself, without the human in the loop, the satellite is able to do its own automated retasking as needed based on the mission requirements. So these are AI algorithms we're able to do. Our cyber intrusion system, CASI, also employs unmonitored, without human in the loop, intrusion detection, using AI algorithms as well. So we've embraced that. We're not in the I would say we're not competing with the large, Apples and Microsofts of the world, with their big AI engines that you just ask it any question, right? That's not how we're going to disperse our energy, but we're going to focus on specific missions of, hey, we know in these ISR missions or these collection missions, there's just too much information for a human to digest. How do we use automation, AI, machine learning in order to point that human to what is most important so that they can take action?
Right. Make it more efficient for your
Absolutely.
human folks or human operators. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's good. Talk to me more about the gamification. I think that's fascinating. What are you guys doing with that? How are you looking at, gamifying the training?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest attractions we have when we're at various trade shows or exhibits, when we have our Auria Innovations team there demonstrating our gamified training, particularly for space operators. So we have what we call the Battle Space Operational Readiness Game Board. And it's very popular within the National Space Defense Center, as well as the U.S. Air Force Academy, for example, where it's being used by current and next generation space operators to teach everything from, I'll say, basic orbital mechanics. I would say, instead of, having to go through an entire, aerospace 101 course in college where you're learning all the orbital dynamics and that sort of thing.
I did that at the Air Force Academy. It's miserable.
It is. Well, we've now gamified it, and so you're learning all that technique in a more modern gamified situation that is actually, very intuitive to today's and tomorrow's generation of what will be our space warfighters. And actually, we've also created an educational version of it called Keplera, which we also use internationally, that we have even in high schools today as well to start teaching that next generation of space operators. And then we have multiple levels that we go all the way up to full scale, what I'll call red blue operations of space warfare, for example. Now, Delta V and how much fuel you got, and what do you got to do to collect on a certain area given an architecture, and what if a threat comes in either from the ground with an ASAT or something in space. Now, how do you operate? And so gamifying it really, allows the users to really learn that in an environment that is not just the classroom textbook, but they're applying those skills, over and over and over again, getting the muscle memory associated, so to speak, with that. And it's an environment that today and tomorrow's generation is just very, very comfortable with and learning rapidly.
Yeah, no, I think that would have been super useful in those classes. Astro is not simple for me. Aeronautical engineer guy.
Right. And so it's a combination. It's a combination of the technology as well as the user experience. So we have the developers, but we also have people developing that gamified system that understand the user experience and how that's got to operate so that it's modern. It looks like something they're used to in any of their, typical, home gaming systems, yet it's the actual techniques that are being used in order to operate space systems today.
Where do you get talent for that? Are you like stealing from the guy, designers of Fortnite? That's a game my kids played. And, are you finding like real gamer programmers?
Some, yes. So it's a combination. You're mixing some of the gamified trainers in with some actual, I'll call space architects or space analysts that understand the environment and know all the math behind it. And the interesting thing to really watch is over time, how these coders who were gamers actually learn space systems over time. As they're building the game, they're learning it, they're using it themselves. And, next thing you know, we have these former, game developers who are now, pretty proficient in space operations. And so they're very good at demoing our products at the various symposiums because now they can speak the language because they've used the tool themselves.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Definitely an interesting way to learn, but, does gamification changes the equation, right? I mean, it makes it super exciting.
Totally does. And it draws in the next generation much sooner as well. Even in areas, there are a couple of space museums that we have our tool in as well. And we see even and we've made versions of it on the Keplera side that are for even like a younger generation, like grade school. And it's interesting to see them come up to the monitor and pick up a mouse and actually start utilizing that tool and picking it up very rapidly and starting to understand some basic concepts.
Yeah, well, that's so cool. It'd be a better way to learn in many cases, I think. So for Auria Space, what are your major goals over the next few years? 5 years, where are you guys going to be? What are you shooting for?
Yeah, we're looking to penetrate the market. We have some great capabilities that are used in the past, I would say, in some more niche areas. And I think one of our goals over the next few years is to go from multiple regional brands into more of a national brand and to penetrate the market, further with the capabilities that we've got. While in parallel, we're looking at the next generation of emerging threats and needs and, developing our products or enhancing our existing tools to be able to accommodate those as well. And so, again, we're going from an area, I think now more and more, we'll probably be in a competition level in some areas with some larger companies as we go forward. So we do intend to compete, kind of on a larger stage as we go forward and penetrate the market more within, our space related domain. And then, like I said, look at those future challenges such as, okay, we're tracking, we're doing tracking with satellite systems for missiles. And okay, how do we now convert that to, tracking UAVs and hypersonic glide vehicles, those types of missions. And so we'll be looking at how we take our expertise and our capabilities and apply them to new emerging missions.
Awesome. So we've obviously seen in the last, decade, massive shifts in technology that have really changed space. So if you were to predict or a potential breakthrough in the space industry, what's going to be one of those biggest shifts? And if you were to bet on it, how would you guys position yourself to leverage that?
I think there will have to be greater shifts in space domain awareness. How do we understand the space environment and what's happening? And so I think we'll see technology change in that direction as we go forward. I would expect, and I think one of the things we are embracing more as we go forward is more of, okay, let's take data analytics and apply it to what we're doing in order to enhance some of our AI and other applications in space domain awareness. And so, taking potentially unrelated data analytics capabilities that are done maybe from, looking at the ground up or looking at massive amounts of data here and being able to reconcile that data and make sense out of it, turn it into actionable intelligence, and now apply that to space systems. I think the consolidation of those capabilities together will help improve our overall space situational awareness, space domain awareness, so that we actually have a better understanding of what's happening in the space environment and how to protect our systems, how to thwart our adversaries, how to determine, if something is a threat or not a threat, if something did happen and a system went down, was it space weather? Was it, just normal, fatigue of the system, or did somebody actually, threaten our systems and now we have to take action? And then how do we recover? How do we make that resilient as we go forward? And so I think the application of data analytics is going to have a big play as we go forward in space operations as well.
So
but then the law of alchemy kind of says the next great thing that's going to change the course of space hasn't even been thought of yet. So, it's kind of like the microwave oven. Nobody realized you needed one until one got invented, and now every house in America has one, right? And so I think that next great space technology is sitting out there as well that everybody will then embrace across all their systems.
So it's really just the ingestion and making sense of the massive amount of data that's,
I talk about continue to be key going forward.
Yeah. So when you talk about domain awareness, we're tracking everything. Where is that challenge for a non-space guy? Where is that challenge? Is it knowing where things are and what they should be doing? And if there's a small shift, recognizing that and then being able to process what could have caused that? Is that where you see? I mean, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't track it, but I feel like there's a lot of tracking systems out there, a lot of capability to track. What is that next step in the domain awareness you keep referring to?
Yes, I mean, you're getting the general concept with it there. Like I said before, space is a big area. Yeah. We're tracking most everything, but it's an ever evolving situation. Things don't stay stagnant in orbit. Orbits degrade, things move. There are chain reactions. Something hits something else, and it causes chain reactions. Satellites are purposely being moved and reorbited, put in different orbits, and so that's an ever-evolving environment. And so for the protection of your own systems, just to understand, what's happening, as things are tracked, and of the 20,000 plus things that are moving, to be able to get alerted when something does something that shouldn't have been normal, that alone is a huge challenge in and of itself. Just to get the alert that says, hey, this moved and I don't think it was supposed to move that way. And then going and doing the analysis to determine, well, was it normal? Was it abnormal? Did somebody move it on purpose? Is it a threat? Is it not a threat? Those types of things are all part of space domain awareness, understanding that environment and more, as well, because that's just the space to space side of it. The other aspect of it is then the ground to space. Did somebody inject something from the ground that caused my system to not operate correctly, or another system? Those are all things that have to be looked at for the total space domain awareness aspect of what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. That's great. So obviously yourself, you progress through the primes engineering side and then into, your leadership position. And what advice would you offer to, aspiring leaders or innovators that, would like to pursue the path similar to yours?
Yeah, I would say, given my experience across the defense industrial base with large systems integrators, as well as smaller and mid-sized emerging technology companies, I think I could answer that probably for three types of audiences: leaders of large companies, leaders of small, mid-sized companies, and then our government leaders. I think for every one of those focus and prioritization is key. Fully understanding the mission space and the problem sets you're working on to impact, and concentrate your energy on achieving what I'll call quantifiable outcomes. It's like I said, we can do anything we want, we just can't do everything. So we do have to prioritize. And you can be a light bulb and just scatter energy everywhere and only go surface level, or I would much more prefer to be more of a laser beam and concentrate that energy to make a definable impression on that mission space. And so for everybody, I think that is really focus and prioritization. I would say for leaders on the larger systems integrator side, let's not forget this is still a people business. The whole defense industrial base, it really is. It's built on relationships and intimacy. It's intimacy with our customers, intimacy with our employees, and intimacy with other companies, whether they be partners or competitors. I think we got to always remember that. And then for the smaller and mid-sized agile technology companies, I'll say, assemble a toolkit of solutions, not just a single offering. Oftentimes, when you make a really good hammer, you have a tendency to see every problem as a nail, and then you're not really effective as you go forward, and you get stale. And I would say, then use your agility to your advantage and be willing to take some risks. Sometimes you just got to swing for the fence. And as I look back through my own career, that there are probably a half a dozen times I came home and said to my wife, I'm not sure what I just did today, but we're taking this risk and it could tank my career. But some of those turned into the next level areas of my career that move forward or move the company forward. So I would say you really have got to be willing to do that in the smaller to mid-size range, and really take some of those chances along the way to make a big impact. And then for the government leaders, I'll say, really embrace the alternate and alternative acquisition models to be able to rapidly gain access to these emerging technologies and new non-traditional emerging technological companies. I think this is where the next great advancements are going to come from, and the demand in the commercial world is beginning to overcome the government need. So, otherwise, if they don't do that, instead of being at the forefront of implementing these advancements, I think they'll find themselves just fighting to be a fast follower. So I think those are, some key advice I would have along each of those areas.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Great advice. And I completely agree. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today, Damian, but I really appreciate your time. It's been fun. If folks want to follow what you guys are doing at Auria Space or yourself, how best would they do that?
Yeah, you can find us on the internet at www.auria.space. We're also on LinkedIn under the same moniker. So yeah, feel free to follow us. We post often, and we put out there some of the new and emerging things we're doing within the community, and where we'll be if you wanted to actually touch and feel, some of the applications we have out there. Go to the App Store. You can download an app called SpyMeSat and register and start using it, today if you wanted. So yeah, we're readily available.
That's great. I'll definitely check you out the next conference, do some of that gamification.
There we go. We'd be happy to have you.
Awesome. Well, it's been really fun conversation. Learned a ton. Really appreciate everything you're doing for our country and our space community. So
we're excited about what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll follow. But thanks again, and keep in touch.
All right, will do. Thank you.
All right.